Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Welcome back to CBSN. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is asking the Pentagon to ready as many as 10,000 troops to support 100 COVID-19 vaccination sites nationwide. Defense officials say they envision 50 mega vaccination sites capable of administering 6,000 shots per day. The other 50 vaccination sites would provide about 3,000 shots daily. The goal is to get all 100 sites operational by mid-February. So far, the CDC says more than 52 million doses have been distributed. 33 million have been administered to date. White House coronavirus coordinator Jeff Zients says FEMA's assistance is already being felt.
As of today, FEMA has provided more than $1.7 billion to 27 states, localities, tribes, and territories. This funding covers critical steps in the vaccination process, including transportation and storage equipment, supplies needed to administer vaccines, and safety equipment like PPE and masks.
Craig Fugate joins me now. He is a former FEMA administrator. Craig, welcome. It's great to have you with us. You obviously have a plethora of experience dealing with emergency management situations. Still, this vaccination effort is in a category of its own. How prepared is FEMA to deal with an emergency like this, a scale of which has never been experienced before?
Well, that's why I think why you see President Biden talking about this will be a whole of government response. And FEMA is coordinating on behalf of the White House a lot of the federal resources, like the Department of Defense, to support the vaccination. So as more vaccines become available, they wanted to make sure that states had the capability to vaccinate even larger numbers of people. So that's why these requests are going out. That's why they're tasking the Department of Defense, not dissimilar to what they did when they started up some of the early hospitals with the Corps of Engineers and military personnel staffing some of the early COVID hospitals.
So if you were still running FEMA, what would be your strategy in administering the most vaccines in the quickest way possible?
Well, I think it's a two-pronged approach, and President Biden has directed FEMA to, first of all, go to 100% funding for state and local governments in the vaccine program. I would combine these large vaccination clinics and sites with the ability to take vaccines to people that may be harder to reach, rural America or tribal lands, and utilize with 100% funding a lot of allied health professionals like paramedics who could take vaccines to people's homes versus people coming in. That'd be particularly important for shut-ins, frail elderly, and other populations.
You bring up a good point that there are lots of wide swaths of the country that are harder to reach than others. And of course, that's a double whammy in terms of coordination, because if the infrastructure isn't there already, you have to also bring in that part of it, right? So is that part of the president's plan to get to those areas that are a little bit more rural, a little bit more out of the way?
Yeah, and again, it goes back to providing the funding to give the states the ability to bring out their National Guard, redeploy resources. But FEMA also has contracts for ambulance service providers to task them to go to rural areas, particularly on tribal lands and some of the more rural areas of the country, to take the nurses and the paramedics out to where people are versus, always going to just the mega sites. It needs to be a combination. And I think that's the strategy the administration is approaching, is to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible, but don't leave behind pockets of people who aren't vaccinated.
Very good point, balancing the mega sites with the more rural areas. So President Biden announced his administration had its sights set on more ambitious vaccination targets, and he hoped the U.S. could ramp up capacity to administer 1.5 million shots a day. Craig, what logistically needs to happen in order to not only make that a reality, but to hopefully even exceed that goal?
Well, the two key components will be availability of vaccine, production of the vaccine as we see more candidates coming online. That's the first hurdle, is having enough vaccine to make this work. And then the second part will be all of the supplies that are required to administer the vaccines, from, protective equipment, gloves, wipes and stuff like that, as well as for some of these that require the specialized refrigeration. So this is, the two pieces I think that they've been addressing, both through working with the pharmaceutical companies, increasing the amount of vaccine, but also looking at tools like the Defense Production Act to also ensure domestic production of some of these key components.
And so if you look at the plan that's being rolled out right now, are there any weak spots? Are there any things that you think have not been considered adequately?
Well, I think, they picked this up midstream as the administration took over. It still comes back to vaccine production. I think that is the key factor. As long as the vaccine manufacturers are able to keep up and deliver what they've said they've been able to deliver, then it will be, as President Biden says, a whole of government approach to get shots in arms. And this is not just the federal government. It's the local and state governments with the federal government backing them up with both the 100% funding, but also the ability to provide additional staffing and capabilities to set up more vaccination clinics, including these mega sites.
So that funding is a key part of it. Thank you so much, Craig Fugate, former FEMA administrator. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.